Production, actually, yeah. Pak Elbi hold his PhD in Interdisciplinary Literacy Studies from Charles Darwin University, graduated in 2021, and now he is the Director of International Office of IAIN Sheikh Nurjati Cirebon, Indonesia. And without any further ado, I'm going to pass on the microphone to Pak Elbi. Silahkan, Pak
All
Elbi.
right, thank you. Selamat malam and good evening, everyone from all over Indonesia and all over the globe. So you can call me Elbi. I'm an associate professor at English Language Teacher Education Department, and my expertise is on multisensory computer-assisted language learning. But in the last 2 years, I have been working on using local wisdom, Sundanese cosmology, into my curriculum and into my teaching learning processes. So I will be talking about the context of that innovation that I call regenerative multisensory computer-assisted language learning. All right, I will probably have to turn off the camera if I'm having a trouble with my internet connection because suddenly at 7:30 p.m. We just lost the internet connection. Let me just share you some of the slides to um, show you how I actually work with the ideas of decolonialization in my work. So I hope you can see my slide here. I will probably spend 40 to 45 minutes to talk about my research journey. All right, so this is the title, everyone. Decentering the Canon, Lutung Kasarung as a site of the colonial practice in English language teaching. And this is actually a joint research project. We have Pak Rudolf Wirawan from the University of Adelaide, who's been working as my research collaborator since 2025. We have Lukman Baihaki from UIN Palangkaraya as well. He's also developing multisensory call after I left Darwin in 2021. And we also have Associate Professor Nisa Trianti from the Netherlands, and also Bu Intan Puspitasari as the founder of Physiology Research Initiative Indonesia. So practically, I have been working with geoscientists, system thinker, also ELT pedagogue like Pak Lukman, and also someone working in physica and psychology. So Bu Intan will be publishing her book in December. And the book is all about the combination between physics and psychology. So I am reading the sacred text of Lutung Kasarung and other ancient texts in Sundanese by using all those interdisciplinary framework. And I also have been assisted by a lot of my students. Some have graduated, some have not. We have big team here. We've got like 8 people working in the area of regenerative multisensory call, and I believe that they are here as well. But before talking about the conceptual basis and the practical side of my work, I'd like to show a picture, which is a favorite place of mine and my family. And this place is called Pasir Batang Hill, or people call it Bukit Teletabis. And this is one of the sacred places that we have in our hometown in Kuningan, located near Gunung Cermai. And according to the custodian of the place, um, there was actually a very big kingdom, probably one of the wealthiest kingdoms in Nusantara Archipelago, long time ago. And there stood a golden building on top of the hill. So if you want to go there, you need to get the approval from the custodian because it's a sacred place. And I just found out that this place is called Pasir Batang, Anugirang, which was actually mentioned also in the Carita Pantun of Lutung Kasarung. I know some of you have heard about Lutung Kasarung, but I might tell you the same story, but with a different perspective. So if you're standing right on the remnant of the palace of Pasir Batang Anugirang, which happens to be the location for the Lutung Kasarung, you can see this beautiful view. This is Waduk Dharma Kuningan, and then this is the range of mountain, which is part of let's say, Bukit Barisan Jawa, that stretches from Gunung Sirah in Banten to Banyuwangi. And the custodian of this place, who is also my research collaborator, exactly knew every single detail of this place. So every time I came to this place, I learned about a lot about the jalur gempa, the tectonical lines from Gunung Sirah to Banyuwangi. I also learned about the story of Cesar from Mangukat, from the custodian, and also from the archaeologist that I'm working with. And this is also one of the best views that you can have if you're standing on that particular place. It's part of Majalengka. Probably this is one of the most fertile sites for nanam padi here. You can harvest the rice for more than 3 times in a year. And it's simply beautiful. How can they, I mean, our ancestors built a kingdom in a hill where you can have like 360 degrees of views, and at the same time in the same location you can have this geological map of Java, of Jawa Barat and Jawa Tengah and also Jawa Timur at the same time. So I was amazed by the fact that even Prof. Bagus Mulyadi from Nottingham University mentioned that our ancestors in Nusantara were all scientists, right? So I was amazed by the story after doing a lot of hikings to this place. And in one single point, I became very aware that the 21st century is defined by, ecological collapse everywhere, right? There's also political chaos everywhere. There's also war, genocide everywhere. So when we talk about sustainability, I don't think that we can reach the sustainability without addressing the local ways of knowing. And that's the reason why I urge myself and my team, we have to move from universal literacy concept to pluriversal, where we can learn different types of knowing, different types of epistemology, right? So from this talk, you can expand the ideas of your research into epistemic justice, ecological regeneration, and neuropedagogical flourishing. Because I believe that when we are replacing the cultural assimilation with language expansion to build dense culturally rooted neural networks, our students will be much even smarter than before. And I also have a kind of moral imperative to help the community in my hometown, especially in this sacred place called Pasir Batang and Segarahiang. I want them to help this kind of resilience because we want to have an inclusive world, right? And building inclusivity always means that we can have more people in every project that we are having. So that's why I believe that we need to have this paradigm shift. All right. So since I work for Universitas Islam Negeri Cyber Syekh Jati Cirebon, so since last year we were inaugurated as the first and the only WIN Cyber in Indonesia. We have big mission to accomplish actually. So since last year, I am developing BIMA framework, bridging intelligence, mindfulness, and awareness with my Australian collaborator, Prof. Rudolf Wirawan, where we are using story pathway, blockchain, AI, and SDD for regenerative community systems. But we want to use Sundanese wisdom, which is called Silih Asa, Silih Asi, Silih Asu, as the locus, as the DNA for the development of the BIMA architecture, for the technological architecture. So I'm working that research right now. And then this is probably a snapshot for all of you about the importance of having local wisdom and modern science in one single view. And we want to use the local wisdom as the DNA for the development of our teaching, learning, and research practices here at UIN, Cyber Syekh Nurjati Cirebon. And in BIMA framework, it's actually a bridge back to local wisdom. We cannot simply use local wisdom without the framework. We need to have a framework first. So this is the philosophy um, where I emphasize that this is not a detour from local wisdom, but a bridge back to it. It's like a homecoming. It's like a remembrance to who our ancestors are. I believe that today's education system disconnected us from our ancestors, right? Disconnected us from the nature, who is also our mother, because in Sundanese cosmology, just like in so many indigenous stories, the rivers, the mountains are metaphorically or even literally symbolized as mama or ibu, right? So we are developing the blueprint, everyone, the Sundanese pillars. How can we actually use the first principle, mutual sharpening, where we see that as the true component of intelligence, where people can co-learn, people can uh, create the critical reflection and sharing the epistemology, mutual compassion, where emotional ethics and moral sensitivity and relational sacredness is part of our daily life. And silih also the mutual nurturing, where awareness is used as the intergenerational stewardship and ecological regeneration. So in essence, BIMA is a living vessel of becoming. And we also believe that the true intelligence is always relational, it's always communal and never isolated, and always regenerative. Right. So BIMA framework is the big technological architecture that we are developing, but we also developed the first layer of technological educational tool back in Australia. We call it multisensory computer assisted language learning. And I was probably the first researcher, and Pak Lukman is the second researcher to work on this integration between verbotenal approach, emotion, and aesthetics. So if you join my class, academic class, creative writing class, you can get exposed to a different kind of learning, or you can use the Moodle where intonation, filtered-based intonation, and emotions are used as the foundation for sensitization of academic English and English in general. So no memorization, no rote memorization, no grammatical mastery at all. You simply hear the field heard intonation of English, and then you can also move your body when you listen to that intonation. And then the way you read English text or any text is also different, where you can focus on the structure of emotions rather than the grammatical or lexicogrammatical features of the text. And from my thesis, from Pak Lukman's thesis, we were very happy because without using grammar, our students, our respondents did very well. They did actually very well in writing academic stuff. So we are expanding this into regenerative multisensory call. because we are having this, big responsibility towards nature. We want to equip our students with the ideas of environmental ethics. So multisensory call is the first layer of the technological framework, and BIMA framework is the big um, architecture that we are now developing together. And in today's talk, I will be simply focusing on this because when I was in Australia, I was analyzing hundreds and hundreds of academic texts using the model of reading for emotions developed by my professor Anya Lyon. And at the same time, I was also analyzing a lot of indigenous Australian texts using the same framework. It was very challenging, but I was happy because when we are analyzing the structure of emotions in the text, we can go to a completely different world. We can build a new, let's say, interpretation, which is different from the typical grammatical interpretation. I'll show you later. And in this model, the framework says every single text has this focus and disturbance and dialogue, development, resolution, and model. Normally, in the indigenous Australian text, um, every single test can have more than one disturbance, more than one single problem. And it's very interesting when I'm comparing it with a typical narrative of Western text that normally has one single problem, one single disturbance. So from that moment on, I was interested in doing more analytical or textual work after doing my PhD. And our work has been published by Springer Nature, Switzerland last year. And we were happy about this publication because we could show to the world that this kind of innovation can be implemented well in under-resourced universities and under-resourced schools in Indonesia. And we want to do more and more. Normally, some scholars will say that you can only do this innovative project in a big school, in a big university, but uh, we just want to flip that script, all right? Any kind of innovation, when better informed, theoretically and conceptually, then we can do a lot of innovative works everywhere. So I'm still working with some teachers, with some lecturers in some small universities in West Java and also in Central Java in this particular area. And this is actually the question, everyone, the real question that I have been having after having my PhD completed. How do we find texts that students don't just study but truly learn to live with? The indigenous Australian are living with the text, living with the stories that the ancestors have. But we are, who are educated in the Western world, or I mean, we can probably go to Indonesian schools, but actually the epistemology is Western, right? And every single text that we study, that we learn at schools, normally has nothing to do with our life. I mean, I've analyzed a lot of texts with my students, and I said to my research team, also to my students, maybe we have to find the real texts that not only we can study them, but we have to live them, to live with them. And this is actually the answer. After 2 years of doing the hiking and a lot of interviews with the custodian and with the archaeologists working in the Gunung Cermai, I just discovered that I have to study the sacred epic poem narrative called Carita Pantun. It's not a pantun that you normally see, but it's a long story delivered in a very sacred ritual by someone called Juru Pantun. and there's only one juru pantun alive in West Java that are doing this kind of sacred thing. And you know what? The full story of the Cerita Pantun can only be delivered when the juru pantun is in the ritual. So in normal conversation, this kind of knowledge, this transcendental knowledge cannot be delivered. So from the interview that I had with the Juru Pantun, Kirastani from Cirebon Timur, he told me very honestly that Kang Elbi, I could mention a lot of places in the Cerita Pantun, but I never knew where those places are located. So in early April this year, I watched him perform 4 hours performance of doing the sacred Carita Pantun. And I heard the very nice harmony between the Kachapi and the zither, and also with the Carita Pantun, because it was like a poem, right? Not just like a typical story. And 4 hours of watching the performance was actually great. And in Sundanese cosmology, there are three Carita Pantun that are considered most sacred. The first one is Lutung Kasarung, which happens exactly in my hometown, Gunung Ciremai, Kuningan. Also near Sumur Bandung, which also happened here. Um, Also, Ciumwanara happened in the Ciamis, but ecologically speaking, since Gunung Ciremai has this ecological significance for a lot of kingdoms in the past and also a lot of places up to this very point, Lutung, Kasarung, Nyisumur Bandung, Ciumwanara come from same, let's say, sumber mata air, which is located in Pasir Batang called Citampian. Citampian is the location where Guru Minda Patanjala, the black monkey, was inaugurated as monkey. So that's how the story goes. And to my surprise, this collection of stories were archived by Harvard University, 1916. I don't know how it went to Harvard University because the foreword was written in the Dutch, but the transcription was written in Bahasa Sunda. And I think it was such a hard work because the transcription was very challenging. You have to listen to the story very well, and then you have to write the whole story um, um, in such a very long time. I mean, the full Carita Pandun can be delivered in more than 8 hours. They normally start the show from 8 or 9 p.m. and it will finish at 3 or 4 or 5 in the morning. That's how the curriculum was delivered in the past by our ancestors for orang-orang biasa. Yeah, because if you are the children of the royal family, you will learn everything from the kitab, from the books in Kamandalaan. But the people, the rakyat biasa, can learn the same story, the same, let's say, technology from the ritual. So for me, ritual is not only prayers, but also an invitation to listen to the signs of the ancestors. Because in every Carita Pantun, the storyteller always tells us the so-called uga, the ecological cues. He can know what will happen in this particular place. Okay, he can predict where the earthquake can actually happen. So it makes me more curious how this kind of transcendental knowledge be implemented in our daily life. And that's why we have professor from Utrecht University. So I'm integrating the cues from Carita Pantun with the principle of geoscience or geomythology, because I believe that every single natural or ecological cues mentioned by our ancestors through the storyteller has this kind of scientific precision. So in Sagarahiang and also in Pasir Batang, I have met some professors working on geology. They had a conversation with our custodian, Pak Sukad, and I see there is a precision about the location of the Jalur Gempa, the Sesar, as mentioned by modern science and also by the communities, community stories. So that's very amazing at the particular time. So there is also a kind of philosophy about this cerita pantun, tong babasa muncan yaba. You're not allowed to talk about this cerita pantun if you haven't been in that place. So this is the real epistemological principle for the Sudanese people. You have to experience the place, you have to meet the people, you have to feel the vibes, you have to feel the frequency of the place. So you can have this kind of situated knowledge, right? Before you talk, before you boast about the experience. So for the Sudanese people, every time you want to talk about some particular knowledge, you have to talk to the custodian, you have to get the approval, you have to be in this place. Well, the Westerners call it place-based education. Well, we have, I think, quite sophisticated place-based education concept here in Jawa Barat. And not only that, I think our ancestors also was very smart because some folklores, some cerita rakyat was designed to be told in many different places in my hometown. So if I went to where my great grandfathers mothers were born, for example, I could hear one single story that is not complete, but then the custodian of the place will, Elbi, you have to go to this uh, place, this village, because you can hear another story to be told by another people. Then I went to the different village, and the custodian will tell me the very same thing. I have to go to another places so I could hear different stories. So after going to 5 or 6 different villages in 1 or 2 days, I could have a relatively bigger picture of the story. So we call this ngabolang, right? Ngabolang means you go to certain places and you collect stories, you experience everything there, and then you can learn from many people. So we have this kind of pilgrimage track, right? So I'm trying to develop that into some learning materials in my English class because it's not found anywhere else in any ELT material that I have, right? So the Ngabolang and then the place-based education principle was very massive for me, and then I am truly enjoying the Ngabolang spirit. So I don't have to drive, but I can ride my motorcycle because some places can only be accessible by motorcycles, and then you can enjoy the green scenery in the mountain, and it was very lovely experience for me. So that's the new epistemology that I'm having right now after doing this research for 2 years. And in Lutung Kasarung, for example, it's not merely about the romance between the monkey and Purbasari, but actually it's about an agricultural liturgy because there is a story as well about have you heard about Nyai Pohaci is the seed of rice coming from heaven, taken by Guru Mila Patanjala to the earth. So that's the story of Nahuma. Um, if you look planting the rice up the hill, up the mountain, that's Nahuma without water, right? So
Right.
it's basically the ideas of agriculture for the Sunnis people in the past. We also learn about cosmological map and ritual technology for ecological alignment. All right, so now I will show you the first part of the story, of the opening, which is very interesting. This is the English translation version because I couldn't read the Sundanese version. I'm a Sundanese, but I couldn't read the ancient Sundanese text. But luckily, AI could help me generate a very nice translation. And then my friend, who is a translator, also said it's a nice translation. If you take a look at the first stanza, for example, to the heavens I offer my prayer, to the gods I beg forgiveness, to the ancestors I offer purity. Have you ever seen or heard or watched any folklore starting with this kind of, invocation to gods and ancestors? Well, never in my life have I ever seen this kind of stuff. So I read every stanza again and again, but I like the first and the fourth part of the opening because it tells me that we have, as a true human being, you have to seek for the truth and you have to live with it. I think if you are either you are Muslim or non-Muslim, you have to seek for the truth and live with the truth all the time in your daily basis, right? So I don't really agree when people say this kind of folklore because it's not folklore because this story starts with invocation, call to God. You have to bow to the ancestors. You have to go bow to the God. All right. So, and another part that I like is this final part of the opening. Placed upon the Handalum tree at dusk, hung upon the Hanjuang tree at noon, a vessel to receive and to release. And this stanza is repeated more than 25 times in the entire transcription of the Carita Pantun. How, I mean, how did our ancestors create or imagine this kind of structure? You started with the invocation and then you finish the one single part with a kind of instruction. And then there is a mention of Handalum tree and Hanjuang tree. I have those trees right now at my home. So it must have some ecological significance, right? Some people say that those trees mark the boundaries between this life and afterlife. Some people say that it's a let's say period where you will have to do goodness even though uh, you are in bad moment in life because life cycle is like a spiral, right? So it's also a big reminder for all of us to think of this cycle and or maybe our ancestors reminding us about the importance of ecological balance. I don't know. We have to work on that. We have to analyze a lot of texts, and I have to talk to a lot of people. And this is how I use AI to amplify my knowledge about the emotional structure of the text. Sorry, it's a bit long, but this is just the example that you can also replicate. And then this is the second prompt where I want the robot to analyze the visualization. So you know what happened? After having these two prompts, I have also some this complicated emotional arc to share with my students. And this is what I have. So the opening of the Raja is the dua. The opening of the Carita Pantun of Lutung Kasarung from or archived by Harvard University actually looks like this. So for the Sudanese people, every time you want to tell a story, you have to bow to the ancestors. Then we have the Essen. Then we have to the Plateau effort because there's a mention of 7 mountains. Um, Not exactly mentioned which mountains. Maybe Gunung Cermai is one of the mountains, but a lot of Karesian, Kamandalaan, and Karamaan and Keprabuan in West Java are located in the mountain. So that's why mountains are very sacred for all of us here. And this is the peak of the spirituality. And then we've got the gentle slope, the offering. And once you have reached the peak, you have to go back to the earth. And then the rooting. We got this Handalum and Hanjuang tree right at the end of every stanza. I mean, almost in 25 lines. So this is how I analyze the text, I mean, the opening using the framework, using reading for emotions and with some small annotations. And I can call this a life tech curriculum or life curriculum for the students people, right? In every Kamandalaan, in every single mountain, there is Kamandalaan, university or school. So you can meet some RC or some teachers or some experts on some particular aspects. Maybe you can learn about seni perang. Maybe you can learn about seni memasak there, or you can learn a lot geology. But practically, all the people went to Kamandalaan to Gunung will have to learn a lot about geology. So our ancestors, yes, are um, 99% or 100% are scientists. If you want to be the king, then you have to know a lot of ecological and geological stuff from our ancestors. So when you hear that our Maharaja are very Sakti, Sakti means, well, our kings learn in the very, sacred places in the mountains. So bagaimana mereka nggak mungkin Sakti, right? And I'm still working on this because once I'm using different kind of, prompts, I can have different kind of visualization. So I'll stick with this picture for the rest of my life and thinking of how can I use this as the basis for the development of my curriculum and teaching learning innovation. And this is the example, everyone, of the analysis of reading for emotions from the Raja. So we have the stage, right? The canonical structures of the text here. We've got the textual anchor, core emotional tone, cognitive function. So your students can actually be driven to analyze this by using AI or on manual basis, or you can make comparisons. This is the manual this is the manual analysis with no assistance of AI, for example, plus the other one assisted by AI. But in some certain level, if they have a clear understanding on how the logic of emotion work, they can amplify their own analysis using AI automatically. So we have here the textual anchor, right? We've got the stanza 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all mapped out, and I'm happy using Gemini for this analysis. And then we have here the core emotional tones as well. One single anchor can have humility and reverence, and you have to talk and you have to ask your students, why do you think that this stanza or this anchor has these emotions called humility and reverence? So instead of asking them the kind of grammatical structures, why this sentence is in the passive form, for example, you have to ask them, how do you feel when you see this stanza, when you read the stanza? So it's all about, sharpening the feeling because neuroscientifically speaking, thinking cannot be, done without the feeling. So emotions are the foundation for the cognitive processes. You can check the references from a lot of sources, Imordino Yang, Max Loms, or all scholars working on emotions. Okay, so I'm not trying to be theoretical in my talk, but yes, in this AI age, you can search for big names in affective neuroscience, for example. Yeah, very interesting how information is delivered through emotions. Right. You can do the same, everyone, asking your students or ask your students to have this long discussion on why they have different core emotional tones, for example. So it could be very interesting. So this is not a formula. It's not a fixed formula, but it's a tool for, sharpening the interpretation. And you can use this single analysis throughout the semester. You can have more than 5, 6, 8, 9 meetings for deepening every single part of the project. And that's what I have seen from the teaching practice of my professor in Australia. So my master's friend in Australia learned one single text using reading for emotion for one single semester. So that's a bit crazy. Probably that's a bit boring, but I've seen the full analysis. It's magic, right? And what does it mean for all of us now? Well, instead of saying you have to study these texts as the future language educator, we have to tell the students you have to live with these texts. And then no more, grammar memorization, vocabulary memorization. But if you ask them to relate emotionally with the text, we were actually helping them to build a very dense emotional neural networks. So, yeah, if they can feel the text and what is felt is never forgotten. You know, that's why I never like, memorizing tenses, memorizing words, because I keep forgetting things when I was a child. So I need a framework, I need a learning tool that help me navigate the text without any memorization, but I can still think very clearly and deeply every time I read the text. So that's what I'm doing. Um, you can move beyond the existing paradigm from, let's say, systemic functional linguistics or genre-based approach to affective literacy to affective pluriversal literacy. And this is just example of how the same analytical framework using emotions and AI and aesthetics are working in some research areas of my students. And also from this moment, I can also tell you that I'm very happy because I can expand my research ideas into something big. Like I can talk about regenerative human capital in the context of West Java, where I can help the communities to develop, modern science and geoscience to build the resilience. So resilience should be developed intellectually from the grassroots level, and I'm 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 part of the project. And also, I want my students to be the custodian of the culture. I want them to feel the Nusantara pride through the stories of our ancestors, and I want them to express it in English so that the world can hear the true stories from our archipelago. Just like, one single chapter from the book by Pak Gita Wiryawan, we need to create a lot of storytellers in Southeast Asia because there are a lot of good things that we have here in our land, in our sacred land, and we need to tell it to the world so the world can learn a lot from us, not the other way around. So I'm also happy that now I'm changing the dynamic of my class where I spend 20% of my teaching in class and 80% of my class are done outside of the classroom. So we are running a lot of seminars, workshops in the mountain, and this is just one of the examples. We have these academic Voices for a Sustainable Earth event, a seminar series on sustainability and ecotheology. And I'm standing with Pak Sukat, the custodian of the land, and also Kang Didin, now working for Niskala Institute. He is a graduate of archaeology from Universitas Indonesia. And the background is very magical. Waduk Dharma, and we're standing, on the remnant of the palace called Pasir Batang Anugiran, which is also collectively uh, recalled by the Baduy people. The Baduy people also know this place a lot in their memory. So everyone, we had focus group discussion with lecturers of English, with teachers of English, with aktivis lingkungan, with aktivis kebudayaan last month, and I'm still working on the analysis. So I do hope that we can work on this project together, everyone, because yeah, it is, moral imperative for all of us to activate the local ways of knowing that we have. So thank you everyone for listening to my story. I might stop here and maybe we can have a discussion very soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mas Albi. Maybe we can give round of applause through our chats or through the reaction from the Zoom. Thank you so much, Mas Albi,
Thank
for
you.
wonderful and very, very comprehensive presentation. So as usual, I'm going to give opportunities for audiences to ask.
Sure.
If I think if you want to ask directly to Mas Elby, you can raise your hand and open your mic. Anyone? Okay. While we're waiting for people asking Mas Elby directly, I think I'm going to read the question from the chat.
All right.
It's from Utami Sri. What are the most common morals you found in these poems and stories? How can these pieces of local wisdom help someone shift from just studying a language to actually living it?
All right. Can I directly address the question?
Yes, please.
Oh, thank you, Utami. She's now in Darwin, my friend. Almost midnight, yeah. Ba Uut, yeah. What are the most common morals you found in these poems and stories? How can these pieces of local wisdom help someone shift from just studying the language to actually living it? A very good question. So, in this story, the eldest, the eldest child of the king, whose name is Purbararang, had this jealousy towards her youngest sister, Purbasari, right? So, Purbasari was witchcraft, right? So she was suddenly ill. I don't know what kind of skin diseases that she had at that moment. So she was put into exile, right? In the common literature, in the common movie or story that we had, we just didn't know what was actually done by Purbasari in her exile, right? So Pasir Batang and the location of the exile of Purbasari are found in the same Gunung Ciremai location, but it was 4 hours apart. 4 hours apart. In Carita Pantun, the real thing that was done by Purbasari was all about building resilience. So she still believed in God. She still put trust in herself. She still did a lot of work, agricultural, stuff, nanam padi, right? And then taking care of the mata air, and then also menenun, weaving. That's why we still have this sacred weaving in one particular place in Majalengka and Sumedang, and it resembles the real tenunan ala Purbasari back then. So I think when people are put in exile, psychologically speaking, yes, you could be distressed, you could go crazy, like you could lose yourself, but with the help of Guru Minda Patanjala, that's the name of the Lutung Kasarung, and also with the help of the divine, because those creatures are, let's say, yeah, Purbasari is a very good-hearted woman, and the black monkey is also a good prince, a good-hearted prince from heaven, actually. So the divine was always, in support for the development of the resilience. So when I heard that story, well, when someone dislikes you, when someone hates you, right? When someone backbites you, will you just take revenge and hit them on the face, or maybe not? Maybe there are some big things that you can do to help you recover, right? So that's what we are, noting from the story, and we are still working on the physiology transcription and analysis. There are a lot of psychological, terms that we can have through the story of Urbasari. So that's number one. And number two, how can we live with the text? So the very first project that I'm having with my students to live with the text is, yes, we went hiking twice with my students. And then probably in August, in the very first rain this year, we will also plant some endemic trees that are only found in Gunung Cermai because we want to keep the mata air alive. And then we went to mata air, Citampian that I mentioned. So if you want to go there, you need to have this approval from the custodian because it's part of the hutan larangan. So in Sundanese cosmology, there is, hutan larangan and tutupan and baladahan. Tutupan is the forest, rimba, right? And then the baladahan is the productive part of the forest when you can nanam padi, sayuran, and etc. But in every single part of the space, there's also larangan, especially when it comes to mata air. So mata air is a very sacred place. So we are planning to go there one more time to plant a lot of trees. And then we also want to create some ecological map. We want to identify what kinds of trees are living in that particular ecology. And then are there more conflicting stories, for example, from the people there regarding the ancestors living in that particular area? So I want my students to record a lot of details every time they go to the mountain, and I want them to write critically, and that is part of critical literacy practices, right? And I want them to tell to the world, not now but probably later, that, well, I'm proud to be a Sundanese. I'm proud to be someone born and raised and grew up in Nusantara, because my ancestors are telling me a lot of stuff that I didn't know, because there are a lot of things that are not explained in our curriculum, right? It's deficit or deficient. That's the reason why we have to expand the curriculum in such way. And number four, um, we are receiving a lot of international guests lately in Pasir Batang and also in Segarahia. So I want my students for uh, all of them are English language teacher education. I want them to serve not only as translators, but also as the custodian of the land. They can tell the participants of the event that they also understand about, the mountain, and then about the river system, about the this STEM related ideas. And every time we go hiking, we have a lot of new knowledge about STEM. We can learn about mathematical concept of, counting the amount of oxygen and carbon dioxide at the same time. We can also explain probably why this tradition resonates with the principle of modern science that are developed in the West. So I think that's how we live, the text. Every time my students go to certain rituals or search certain agendas, tradition, I want them to spend some time to think of it, and hopefully they can explain the ritual in the most scientific way. So we are building this, alignment between tradition and science, science and tradition. And I don't want to create, false dichotomy. This is science, this is tradition. No, tradition has been proven for thousands of years, right? So science is still, doing the experimentation. So that's what I'm doing. That's how we should live the text, right? And then the most interesting part will be like the ability, to read the nature. Maybe at some stage in the learning process, our custodian will tell us if you hear certain songs of this bird, it will rain heavily, or it will, uh, something bad will happen. So I'm searching for a lot of clues about that. How can the rhythm of nature can help us to read what's going to happen in our place? So that's what I also learned when I was in Kakadu National Park in 2020. So we went to sacred places in Kakadu National Park for our drive from Darwin, Australia, and that's what we are doing. All right, so very interesting. So, well, that's I think the information I can share about how can we live with the text. I know it's a long project, but curriculum is actually about, living the things, right? Curriculum is not
Yeah.
about not delivering the content.
Yeah.
No, not at all about that. Thank you so much for the question.
Yeah. Not only compliance, but also feeling.
Right, right.
Thank you, Pak Lala.
Thank you, Bao. Thank you so much. Any more questions, about Christine?
Yeah, thank you, Mbak Ut and Mas Elbi. There's one question. I think
Oh
you
yeah,
have addressed it earlier, but maybe if you want to address it more from
right,
the
right,
Radrak Pagiling, in your experience, how to
right.
commence decolonization in curriculum.
Well, I started this decolonial project by doing, a lot of hikings. So I told my friend on Kosim 2, 3 years ago, I want to go somewhere in the mountain, but I don't want to see a lot of people there. Can you help me find 1 or 2 locations where I can spend good time with my family? And then he suggested this, all right, we can go to Sagarahyang where you can meet Ukad, the custodian of the land. Who is he? I said, because I didn't know much about him, right? But in fact, Pak Sukad is a very well-known figure. So Pak Ukad is a conservationist because he has been planting thousands of trees near Gunung Cermai for more than 35 years using his own money. And then he also is a farmer. And then he knows a lot about organic and non-organic type of farming. And that's why last month or 2 months ago, we had this international visit from GTA, Global Tapestry of Alternative. So we were talking about this with Pak Okad as well. So that's how I started the decolonization project. I talked to Pak Okad. I took notes a lot. I recorded every single conversation, right? For 2 years. And then every time I went home, I re-listened to the conversation that we had. I read a lot of books on geology, on ecology, on culture, because many people think that, culture is only about social thing, or about artistic things, but they never actually talk about the ideas behind the dance, the songs, right? The story. So actually, culture is much more about ecology. So I started looking at, the geography of the mountain, geography of the land. I started reading Bujangga Manik, the Prince of Pajajaran who traveled to Java and Bali twice, I guess, and then he transcribed a lot of stories and also mentioned a lot of new names for the trees as well. And that's number one. And number two, what I did was I am very lucky to meet Prof. Rudolf Wirawan from University of Adelaide. So he came to our university, and we talk about this BIMA framework. All right, we want to develop technological architecture, but the DNA is local wisdom. The technological architecture developed in the West is now ready, but the bloodstream is not ready yet. So I'm I'm into it. So I started working, on the decolonial stuff through the Carita Pantun. So for me, reading the Carita Pantun, Lutung Kasarung, Sumur Bandung, and Chung Wanara over and over again was actually the true milestone. I also went to see the real performance of the Carita Pantun, and then um, I also talked to the archaeologists. So Kang Didin, graduating from UI, archaeology UI, he spent like almost 2 years in his scriptsy. So he traveled from Gunung Cermai to the mountain area in Salem Brebes. He was actually studying the relationship between Jalur Tectonic Purba with the folklore. So he spent 2 years in the mountain. And then he told me that it was very, um, let's say, inspiring story for him because he could meet a lot of people. He went to a lot of places that are not mentioned in the map. And then he talked to a lot of custodian of the people. And then once he finished his study, I can say that he's probably a new graduate from OE that has the most complete data about the relationship between Jalur Tektonik Purba with the folklore that are found in Kuningan up to Salem Brebes. So yes, so reading Carita Pantun, which are found actually near my hometown, it only takes like 40 minutes drive or ride from my house to Pasir Batang and Segarahiang. So I studied the decolonization project um, right here in my house. So I don't have to go to Australia. I don't have to go to Finland. I don't have to go elsewhere just to find the voices of my ancestors, because the voices, the stories, the wisdom of my ancestors are delivered through the ritual of the Carita Pantun, through the stories delivered by the custodian of the land. So I'm collecting the wisdom, not only the knowledge. So you can start from your let's say your own milieu, right? So your early environment here. You don't have to go that far, to find the voice of the ancestors. So that's all I can say. That's the milestone. Anything else?
So, all
We have
right.
Ilma
There
here.
are two. One is from Ilma. I think Ilma is saying that she's a master's student at
Hmm.
UGM,
Right, right.
focusing on Patanjala as a Sundanese ecological knowledge framework, and would love
Yeah.
to connect with you later on.
Oh yeah, all right. Actually, 2 weeks ago, I went to a Patanjala event here in Sanggarahiang. So I learned a lot about that. Patanjala, the name Patanjala actually comes from the name of our ancestor, Guru Minda Patanjala. That's the real name of the prince, descending from heaven to earth. That's the name of the black monkey. And and Patanjala is now used as the, let's say, the label for the cosmological wisdom on Patanjala, right? I hope that you have met Pak Rahmat Lewung and his team in Bandung to talk about this. And I think Pak Rahmat Lewung also hold an event in the, is it Sabuga or I forgot the place, or in somewhere in Setiabudi, Bosha, the Bosha, yeah, probably 2 months ago. So yes, Chikura, yeah, right. So there are a lot of people working on Patanjala, right? Pangauban, and I think you can expand a lot of research stuff when working with the ideas about Patanjala as well. I'm now reading, buku called Dangyang Karinding, recently published by Kang Kimung ya, Kang Kimung, and he also mentioned a lot of gratitude to Pak Rahmat Lowong because Pak Rahmat Wole not only focuses on Patanjala only, but also he helped really promote and promote the real awareness of having this karinding to be alive in Sundanese culture, right? So thank you, and then good luck with your studies, Mbak Ilma. We also have a question from Derek.
Yeah.
Derek, thank you. How did your students take to this method to ELT, especially in comparison to the more traditional memorizing grammar methods you mentioned previously? Did the connection to Sundanese culture help students feel what you were getting at more strongly? Right. So for my analysis, the students had strong quantitative engagement, quantitative speaking. I forgot to put that in my slide because at Win Cyber Syekh Nurjati Cirebon, one of my biggest challenge is to create learning content that attracts, a kind of depth of the material, right? So it's pretty challenging, right? So I'm now reworking on that. So with my team, I'm working on the development of, let's say, learning materials that can generate learning depth because we are promoting deep learning, right? That's number one. And number two, I think the most challenging part for my students is not reading the text using reading for emotion model or using AI, but it's about the physical challenge when you have to go on a hiking trip. So when we went to the first site in Sagarahiang, it was pretty close from our parking spot. We could only walk like 5 minutes, and we could gather in that particular place and did some dua, yeah. And then we went to the second part of the uh, what is it? Linga, Situs Linga, right? The second part of the location, and the road was like this, the trip was like this, so pretty challenging, and you have to be physically, okay before going, on a hiking trip. And what we haven't done is, to explore the exile spot of Purbasari because we need to walk for about 4 to 5 hours from Sagarahiang or from Pasir Batang, and then it's going to be, yeah, physically challenging because we have to go to the hill called Pasir Batang and Citampian and Gunung Sirah. The nearby hill, Gunung Sirah, was the place where Guru Minda Patanjala fell to the earth. Gunung Sirah was, the head was the first part of the body that actually landed on the ground. That's why we call it Gunung Sira. So we never go there yet, but once we have been there, we will have to, schedule for the trip to a very, let's say, highest place in the mountain, and it's not easy to get there. So in terms of methodology, I think my students are quite happy because they don't have to memorize a lot of stuff, right? What they need to do is, to observe a lot of details. So every time they went to one particular spot, they have to, develop that kind of full awareness. They had to tell us what they feel, what they see, or what questions did they ask. In the mountain we had this, a lot of series of talks, and then I was just happy. Pak Ukan and Didin was just so happy when they heard the questions by my students. So the questions are all about, ma'rifat, the nature of God, the nature of religion. We can talk about philosophy. So for the second semester students going on a trip, to the mountain with us, and then they can talk about ecology. They can ask about the relationship between God and Quran, for example, or with the mata air, with the sungai. So it was really awesome. So I think my job is to create conditions where my students can find freedom in asking questions, in asking good questions, right? Once they can good create great questions, over time, there will be a smart language user. And I think being a language user right now is very crucial because now we live in the age of AI. We just don't want to get, outsmarted by AI, right? So in terms of methodology, my students will have to write a lot. Or maybe that could be the most challenging part because, yeah, they have to write either in Bahasa Indonesia or in English, but they can actually, develop this writing competency using AI, right? In some stage, they can translate the language, Bahasa Sunda or Jawa Cirebon or Bahasa Inggris, in one single, let's say, critical reflection. And I have to encourage my students to have this expressivity capability. I know you can have good grammatical skills, you can have a lot of vocabulary, but it's not that easy to express your feelings, to express your ideas, right? So that's what I'm doing, Derek. I hope that um, everything works well. It's a long journey. I couldn't say that this is the best teaching method, but I'm enjoying it right now, and I think it works so well with my students so far. All right, so do we have another question here from
Yes.
Leica?
Yeah. We do have a question from Leica. So she's a second year philosophy student at UGM
Right.
and also Sundanese. And she's asking about what do you think are the most interesting thing about cosmology, especially Sundanese ones? Also, speaking epistemically, is there any suggestion on how we should operate as Majapahit? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mbak Leica, yeah. Second year philosophy student. Oh, all right. Somebody listening, what do you think there was? Okay, so to be honest, the most interesting part of doing this cosmology decolonial work is that I was taught by the ancestors here that having a strong connection with the divine is simply everything. And that's actually missing from the Western curriculum. So every time I talk about, deep curriculum in the workshops or in the seminar, I always tell the audience that spirituality is the very first part of, the Sundanese cosmology. So I just, had a lot of trips with Pak Sukan. Okay, so one day I picked him up for an event at my university. So I went early to pick him up, and before he left the village, he recited some dua in Bahasa Sunda and also in Arabic. In some other places, he also did probably the same or similar dua. I'm not sure, but he know exactly when to tell the ancestors that he had to leave this place. So this is the dua that he had to recite. So if you're a Muslim, especially if you are a Muslim, right, having this connection with God is everything, right? Um, and then that's number one, and number two, the closeness that we have with nature is also everything. In cosmology, we are actually a part of the nature. We don't live in nature, but we are part of the nature. If we destroy the mata air, if we destroy everything in the mountain, we are destroying our life. So this kind of awareness on nature, people, relationship, for me is just massive. And number three, the most interesting part about this cosmology is that knowledge is not only relational but also communal. So when we talk about, let's say, the hutan larangan, tutupan baladahan, right? Every single person has to comply with the rule. You cannot enter, you cannot have access to hutan larangan because it's completely forbidden unless you are having a permit from the custodian. It means that in terms of cosmology, the very first part of learning is about, having this spatial awareness, kesadaran tentang ruang. This is the room, this is the space where you can go, right? This is the space you can never go, you can never enter. That's also interesting. But if you read buku Reset Indonesia, there are a lot of companies that are established in hulu sungai, right? In the larangan area. That's why the flood in Sumatra happened, right? And Pak Ukad told me recently that lebarnya arus banjir is equivalent with the area that is damaged in that particular mountain area. Maybe we can count that part. So the precision that the cosmology of Sundanese people has is also massive. Probably not only Sundanese. Maybe you can talk also to the Japanese or to the Sumatran or to the indigenous people from other parts of Nusantara. Um, I can predict that they have this, let's say, epistemological precision. Jadi ilmunya itu sangat presisi when compared, to the modern science. It's also interesting part. So that's why I'm creating a project where my students can work with the custodian, with the archaeologists, with the psychologists to work on this. How can we interpret the cues, the stories about disaster mitigation rates, for example, from the custodian, when compared to the principle of geomythology or geoscience. It's also an interesting part. So one, two, three, four, yeah, maybe four or five most interesting parts, and I believe that there are a lot of interesting stuff if you can explore more and more. So that's the nature of knowledge, because the more you are pursuing knowledge, the more you will be enlightened, right? So that's the clue for Lika from UGM. So good luck for your study as well. I hope that we can connect soon. Anything else, Christine?
Okay, now I'm going to give chance for people who want to ask directly. I think there were one person who raised their hand. Anyone? Okay, maybe while we're waiting, actually I have a question related to
Sure.
yeah, related to your presentation because I noted from yeah, I know there's one question, but after this one, so
Yeah.
it said the Carita Pantun Lutung Kasarung is described as sacred, right, in Sundanese
Right.
cosmology.
Right.
So I'm wondering your considerations, what consideration that arise when you translate sacred knowledge into classroom learning outcomes or
Right.
AI, emotional arcs, the
Mm.
assessment rubric, that kind of thing, and um, what or where are the boundaries to
Right. Right.
in order for the sacred ones to stills.
Yeah. Right. So for your information, the Baduy people, especially the Baduy Dalam people, will never be interested in talking about um, Lutung Kasarung, because Lutung Kasarung is included in the most or the most respected ancestors of the Sundanese people. Okay, and if you go to an event called Babarit, Sedekah Bumi, in this Muharram month in Islam, in many places here, a lot of villages are running this event called Babarit, the Sedekah Bumi. And in the evening, the elders of the village normally mention every single name of the sesepuh, the ancestors, and Guru Bina Patanjala and Purbasari, Purbararang, and the other children are also mentioned in the Babarit of Desa Segariang, for example, last night. I watched the event. So it's also the same question. So I never asked Pak Ukad to tell me about Lutung Kasarung in person. Because I started my hiking journey in Sagarahiang. So Pasir Batang is a nearby village, probably 10 hours, no, 10 hours, sorry, 10 minutes ride from Pasir Batang, from Sagarahiang. In several moments, Mang Ukad told me that that location is called Pasir Batang, and that exactly where Lutung Kasarung actually happened. So it's like, and he mentioned that several times. So later, I was, personally invited. I want to know more, and then can we go to Pasir Batang? Yeah, without ever talking about, Lutung Kasarung first. So we went to Pasir Batang. Um, uh, we also went to the location of the palace. But in that first experience, he didn't tell me that the kingdom was actually there, right? So after a year doing this research, I found out that the sacredness of the story was, but Maungkad mentioned to me that when you hear some knowledge about ecology, about certain places or certain event, you have to be part of it. So if there is an UGA or ecological cues mentioned by the storyteller, right? You just cannot be the listener, no, because the real knowledge is when you can embody the knowledge. It means that you have to be part of it. So I'll give you the example. If your parents say to you, jangan buang sampah, never litter in the house, right? In order for you to fully understand the instruction, you have to embody the instruction from your parents, right? This is where you have to put the litter, and then yeah, you just know where to put all those rubbish, all the litter, right? The same is true with this. So if there is a mention, for example, in the cues, in order for this place to be prosperous, you have to find these trees, and the storyteller will tell you this, and you have to plant those trees in certain days and dates, and you have to plant all of these trees in certain areas. And it's actually an invitation, to do the thing mentioned by the storyteller, by the juru pantun. And that's number one. So number two is about the precision. The precision. It's sacred because when it comes to the calculation of titik gempa, mata air, jalur tektonik purba, which is still very active here in Gunung Cermai as well, it should be very precise. If you cannot build that precision, and if you cannot embody the knowledge, and if you retell the story in, not in a good way, for example, calamity can happen, chaos can happen. So I'm also still very careful in talking and analyzing some stuff regarding the naturally related cues, especially from the Carita Pantun. So the sacredness is actually an invitation for you to do the Dharma. Dharma means perbuatan baik, right? So that's big. that's why we have Kecamatan Dharma here because um the I think the big Kamandalan also resided here in Dharma where a lot of people, doing the Dharma back in the past, BKD dosen and also the what is it? The evidence of your work is not on your academic writing published in Scopus Index journals, but in your Dharma, in your laku, right? So that's a little bit about the sacredness, and um, and that's the reason Kirastani never performed the whole entire section of the um, Carita Pandu Lutung Kasarung because yeah, it could take like more than 10 hours to complete. We could be very um, physically tired listening and watching to the story. And once we are tired, then we cannot, grasp everything from the story. So sacred means that once you hear something insightful, you have to be a part of it. If you don't want to be part of it, then you violate, the sacredness. So that's what I heard from Pak Ukad, the custodian of the land. And number two, why was I interested in doing this emotions? Well, since I have been working with this kind of analytical framework since 2017 when I was in Darwin, Australia, um, the neuroscientific stuff always mentioned that, you know, the text is not only about the data. The data cannot be accessed if you cannot access the emotion of the text. So any text is let's say an emotional architecture. Before you go into the house, you have to feel, right? That's the feeling that actually works, that the feeling that actually speaks. In Indonesia, there are a lot of people who are driving big cars, right? The Fortuner, the Pajero one, etc. Well, it's okay. But psychologically speaking, if you are driving that kind of big car, it gives you like, I'm the boss, I'm big, I'm powerful, right? It's more on emotions rather than, the other benefits of having big cars. And then emotion is the foundation for cognition. That's for sure. So I want to know how the information are encoded emotionally throughout the poem because Carita Patun is actually the poem. So I was doing my sastra Inggris in my undergrad from Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia Bandung. Then my master's is on educational stuff. So I've got MED, but more on linguistic stuff. But in my PhD, I learned something that I was probably missing. Right. So the doctrine from my professors was very strong when I was in Darwin. Well, now let's do this analysis without memorizing things. So you can tell me how the information are structured using emotion. That's pretty challenging at first. But later in life, I had this better confidence in analyzing text. And 2 years ago, I was thinking, since I've got the copies of um, the Carita Panun from Kang Didin probably a year or 2 years ago, I didn't have the courage, to read the whole story. It gives me goosebumps every time I looked at the printed text on Lutung Kasarung or even on my screen. But then I started working gradually on the analysis. It probably gives me a lot of hints about the sophistication of the text created by my ancestors. Well, since the analysis is very, very long, maybe we can meet up later to talk about this. The most interesting part of the analysis is why our ancestors coded the knowledge in the form of poems, not in the typical story that we had. Maybe you can search for yourself about let's say, the power of poems. the power of poems as the codification of knowledge or as the coding of knowledge in the past. Why our knowledge in the past are coded in the poem? And Paukad also gave me a hint. So the reason why it is stored in the poem is because the ancestors want to train our critical thinking. And that's the reason why we have, to read a lot of poems. I think everyone having this kind of exposure to poetry normally have these very sharp feelings, sharp thinking about everything, right? And there are a lot of, explanations, scientific explanation for that. So that's the reason why I was very, interested in analyzing the text using emotions. And so today I actually refined the analysis. I had a previous analysis that I presented last week in a conference, but then I realized that something is missing from the analysis. So today I spent like more than 7 hours to redo the analysis and to do a lot of stuff for my PowerPoint. And I think I'm quite happy with that. So my next mission is to tell the future teachers in Indonesia, well, a lot of teachers of English in Indonesia are not good in, doing grammar. Yeah, we have to be honest with that, and it doesn't matter if you've got a kid and then you bring her or him to Australia or to US or to London. Well, they never tell you about grammar. Suddenly, my daughter can speak English very well after 3 months in Darwin, and she speaks like a native speaker, and she didn't learn, explicit grammar at all. So I'm trying to tell the students especially that we can read the text not by using grammar and vocabulary alone. So the first layer is always about emotions and intonation actually, because emotions are intonations are the most important, the most critical components in language processing. Every time we hear a sentence or a story, what was first processed was actually emotions and intonation in the right hemisphere of the brain, not the grammar. So the grammar and vocabulary are processed in the left hemisphere of the brain. But the precondition is that you must first work on the emotion and intonation first. So anyone having a problem with intonation and emotion normally have problems in grammatical mastery and vocabulary mastery. That's what I learned from Ian McGilchrist in 2011 books and 2014 or 12 books, I guess. Right, so maybe that's the answer. Christine, I hope you're happy.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for that answer. All right. So we have a question.
We have
Let
a
me
question
check.
from Aisha, right?
Yeah, from Aisha. So she's a third year student in UIA. We have anti-colonial theories on spirituality taught in sociology classes that might intrigue you. My question is, are there any digital archiving efforts of the ecology areas you talk about to preserve the area?
Oh, so the question is not yet, but we are still working on the digital archives of the ecology. That's because it's a long-term project, and I'm working with a lot of scholars from Indonesia, Australia, and the Netherlands. Can probably finish the project, I don't know, in 3 years from now, right? Because I have to do a lot of hiking trips for sure, and if I read the second and the third Carita Pantun, then I have to do more hiking trips here and analyzing the entire parts of the text will also be a bit challenging. But it's quite actually nice and inspiring because if you're from Bandung, then many people will say, well, Nyai Sumur Bandung is from Bandung because we also have this place called Kota Waringin, right? But here in Kuningan, we have Kota Waringin, located near Ciamis, Jawa Barat, Ranca, Ciamis, Jawa Barat. And there is this sumber mata air Cisanggarung Purba. So we have this sungai Purba, right, called Cisanggarung here that flows from Ciremai to Brebes. We also have these archaeological artifacts here. So if you're from Bandung and you're familiar with the Carita Tangkuban Perahu, we also have here the real Tangkuban Perahu, which is um, not bigger but longer. If you go to Kuningan Timur and Cirebon Timur, there is this called Gunung Azimut, right? And we have a lot of archaeological evidence emphasizing that the story also happened here. So my wife is from Bandung. We always argue about this case. I said to her that no, I mean Nyai Sumur Bandung actually happened here, and then also Sangkuriang also happened here because we have a lot of archaeological geological sites representing the real story. So in terms of digitalization, we need to make that kind of intellectual comparison, right? And Ukad also mentioned that it's a good thing if one story can be replicated elsewhere. It means that this story is a good one to tell to the children, right? So that's what I'm doing. I hope we can not finish. Once we finish the project, maybe when we finalize the project, we can share that to the world. Yeah, there are still many things that are happening right now, and we are working very hard on it. I hope that we can also connect soon to talk about this. Thank you, Aisha, for the question or comments. Anything else,
All right.
Christine?
Um, anyone else want to ask question directly or through chat? All right. Yeah, I think there's no questions.
All right.
All right. Okay, so okay. That's the end of the session for today. Thank you so much, Mas Elbi,
Thank you so
for
much,
your time, for
Christine.
your very, very great presentation. I really learned a lot from your presentation, and also from all the questions and answers.
Thank
It
you.
really intrigues me as a lecturer myself. So yeah, it really make me think a lot of the methods of the tools and the way to make students not only learn but
Right.
also to live with the with the courses with this decolonial method. So thank you so much,
Thank you so
Ms.
much, Christine,
Elvi.
and everyone.
Yes, thank you everyone, and I think we will have another session, and we're going to inform the next session on our group chat. So stay tuned, everyone, and thank you, everyone. Thank
Thank
you,
you, everyone. Thank
Elvi.
you.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.